versus Anderson. One of them will be undefeated on the day at 8-0, 1-2 in the standings right now. Players with plenty of meetings between the two of them.
And goes without saying, these two very close friends.
All right, well, Gerry will start out on Inquisition of Kozilek, and he'll see what he's working with. This is a fast draw here from Todd. We see 2 lands, Glistener Elf, and then it looks like a full quartet of pump spells. Become Immense, Vines of Vastwood, Mutagenic Growth, Groundswell, all at the ready. I mean, this seems easy from Gerry's side, right? You take the creature.
Unless his hand is constructed in a really weird way, yeah. I mean, for a control deck, all you have to do is win the battle over the 12 Infect creatures, and that reduces the Infect deck to trying to win with pump spells on Noble Hierarchs, Dryad Arbor, Spell Skites, very hard ways to win the game. So I'm a fan of just aggressively attacking the actual Infect creatures with discard spells and removal.
And Gerry, gonna go ahead and take a look at this one. And yeah, it'll be Glistener Elf taken down. So Todd, 2 lands. Now one of them's a creature, but not an Infector. It's Dryad Arbor. You see Todd gonna play the hand face up. It's while Gerry writes it down and goes ahead and picks it up. Todd's draw for the turn was a copy of Gitaxian Probe, and he actually, rather than casting it, kept one in his hand.
I think he was waiting for maybe a little bit longer, a little bit more information to be, or at least to be able to follow up with something.
Yeah, as is Gerry, casts Inquisition of Kozilek, could have taken the Probe to punish Todd for keeping it, but actually goes with Vines of Vastwood here. So 2 discard spells for Gerry. And it'll be a Serum Visions. Todd going to try to reconstruct his hand that Gerry has torn apart.
So now Todd looking at a Groundswell here, and he's got a couple options, which is ship both to the bottom and try to find an Infect creature, or keep a pump spell and try to win Au Natural, and it looks like Todd's going the other route.
Yeah, ships them both to the bottom. He did draw a Noble Hierarch off of the Serum Visions, was able to play that for the turn. And all things considered, this, after he lost his first Glistener Elf, things I feel like have actually gone pretty well for Todd.
Well, the issue here is I think that Thompson is still sitting with a Terminate in hand. Yeah,
and great options. He goes to terminate Dryad Arbor over Noble Hierarch, and he'll pass.
And once your opponent's in a position where they are terminating a Dryad Arbor rather than sitting on it, waiting for an Infect creature, their hand's probably got some very good follow-up.
All right, we'll get a look at it. Todd does now decide it's time for Gitaxian Probe. So Gerry's hand is a Polluted Delta, a Thought Scour, and a Snapcaster Mage. That mono good stuff hand that you kind of expect out of Grixis control.
Todd picking up another pump spell, but no Infect creature to be found.
So he'll get in some regular damage while he can. Puts Gerry down to 16, and Gerry will Thought Scour. Puts a Piankier on Nalar and a Lightning Bolt into the graveyard. As he draws here, looks like he has found yet another discard spell. And Gerry doing a great job of controlling the early game, though the deck doesn't finish very quickly, I don't believe.
Well, that's where some of the threats like Tassikar and Piankier and Nalar can come in, but it is a slow burn for Thompson's deck. It takes a long time under normal circumstances, and we might see him actually go to the Creeping Tar Pit over the next 2 turns, try to get a clock in play.
All right, so Gerry, 4th land is that Polluted Delta. Does have copy of Snapcaster Mage for card advantage. He'll pass the turn. So go back to Todd. He untaps 2 lands, Noble Hierarch. We know his hand is just full of pump spells. And his draw was a Gitaxian Probe. You see Todd has now switched over. He's stopped paying life for his probes.
Well, he can cast anything he draws off the top. He can cast Blighted Agent, and everything else is cheaper or something he wouldn't want to cast right now.
Yeah, looks at Gerry's hand. It is a Inquisition of Kozilek, a land, and a Snapcaster Mage. There seems to be some concern on Gerry's side that he's just running out of gas at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Gerry can kind of... it wouldn't surprise me here if Gerry decided to get the Snapcaster in play, kill something, and turn around and start clocking. The risk there is, of course, if Todd draws an Infect creature off the top, now you're suddenly in trouble.
Yeah.
I think Thompson can at least hang back and take these shots for a turn or two before having to answer the Noble Hierarch.
Well, with so much pump in Todd's hand, how much... I mean, does Gerry he has to be concerned that Todd could just start pumping the Noble Hierarch if he gets in enough free hits?
Yeah, you got to be worried about that, but Thompson has an incredible insurance policy in Terminate. If his removal spell in hand was damage-based, maybe he has to play it a little bit differently, but with a Terminate, he's got great insurance if Anderson makes a move that aggressive.
All right, end step. Gerry will go ahead and get a Steam Vents, draws for the turn, more discard. That one's a copy of Thoughtseize. That's not doing much for him right now. As you see him starting to go to basics, he will use one of his discard spells. See which one it is. He has an Inquisition and a Thoughtseize available. And Todd's hand, groundswell, become immense, mutagenic growth. That is 16 points of pump.
Yep. Now Anderson knows because of the Gitaxian Probe about the Snapcaster Mage in hand, so he can't make too aggressive of a push. But if Thompson ever puts the shields down, or if Anderson draws a second threat card, those pump spells can finish out the game.
Takes one of Todd's groundswells, so Todd left with a trio of pump spells. And he'll go ahead and use Snapcaster to terminate away the Noble Hierarch. You know, feeling like he maybe needs to have some pressure here.
Yeah, you know, he knows that basically any threat from Anderson at this point is effectively lethal because of the number of pump spells in Anderson's hand. And Thompson's best route here is probably to try to shorten the length of the game, getting aggressive with the Snapcaster Mage and the Creeping Tar Pit.
Go back over to Todd. Draw was a fetch land, so no threat yet for him. He is at 17 right now. Lands and pump spells facing down Snapcaster Mage and what might be Creeping Tar Pit. So Gerry, 4, maybe 3 turn clock. And a great draw from him is going to be a copy of Jace Vryn's Prodigy. You know, we were seeing this a ton in Standard, and this is the first time, Gerry said a full play set of these in the deck.
Yeah, and this is a great spot for this card as, you know, he needs access to another removal spell. The only problem here with Jace is not an answer to Inkmoth Nexus should that come off the top. But it does mean that Thompson has a follow-up play in the event that Anderson finds a creature that can be targeted with removal spells.
All right, Gerry goes ahead and uses the Jace to loot. Draws Mana Leak, opts to discard that one, but Jace will flip. And now it is Creeping Tar Pit alongside Snapcaster Mage swinging in, putting Todd down to 10. 1 red up for Gerry. He did pick up a copy of Lightning Bolt last turn. And now from Todd, it's Glistener Elf. And this one's big. Todd, 12 points of pump in his hand.
Remember, Thompson with the ability to flashback that terminate in the graveyard.
Yeah, and this is, if you want to go back to just the details here, if you remember that second Inquisition of Kozilek, this is turn 2. Rather than taking a Gitaxian Probe to kind of leave Todd with the all pump spells hand, Gerry selectively caught a Vines of Vastwood out of Todd's hand, and it's just paying dividends now so many turns down the road.
Yeah, I mean, Thompson needs to have his targeted removal line up and kill things as consistently as possible.
Yeah, if Todd had a Vines, Gerry would be really concerned right now. From Gerry, it's going to be another discard spell, takes care of Become Immense. But Todd had drawn another one, so still 3 pump spells. But Gerry keeps the pressure on. Serum Visions draws him a Mana Leak. Scries cards top and bottom.
Now that Terminate got flashback earlier because of the Snapcaster Mage, so I don't think there's a clean answer for the Infect creature in Thompson's graveyard just yet.
All right, so with no clean answer, I mean, how does he do this then? He has to throw Lightning Bolts into it to get rid of the pump spells?
He can just, I mean, he can block. He can plus the Jace, forces some action on the other side of the table.
Looks like that's the line he'll go for. So Jace is plussed on Glistener Elf. That means it has -1 power as it stands. Remember, Todd, 3 pump spells. The mutagenic growth, not ideal here. The other 2 seem to be pretty good, though.
So Anderson, falling to 9 here to fetch. I think Thompson has a Lightning Bolt in hand, which means if he can get out of this turn, he can bolt Anderson down to 6, flashback the bolt with the Jace the next turn, get him down to 3, Creeping Tar Pit to finish off the game.
Okay, so rather than killing the Glistener Elf, he can just chump and then win the following turn.
Yes.
We'll see if he does that. Todd's draw for the turn was Might of Old Krosa. And here's a big turn. But if I'm reading you right, Gerry doesn't even have to fight over this, right? He could just be going upstairs, and he has perfect information. So he's going to try to bolt the Glistener Elf. Todd will go for Groundswell. He did fetch this turn, so it's fully online. Mana Leak from Gerry. That'll take care of the Groundswell. Might have Old Krosa. Well, okay, Todd will have to become immense. All right, now Glistener Elf is very lethal, so Snapcaster Mage will block it. It's possible, Gerry. So there may have been a missed kill on that turn.
I do not know if mana was necessarily, if Thompson had access to all the mana that he needed. There's also a fine route as he just runs Anderson out and finishes off the Infect creatures. Creeping Tar Pit's still available.
So that's what he'll go ahead and do. Now that we're back on his own turn, he will go ahead and flash back the Lightning Bolt. That takes care of the Glistener Elf. He attacks for 3, has Todd down to 6. Todd's draw was Inkmoth Nexus, so he has a replacement creature. But what a card left in Gerry's hand. He has another copy of Kolaghan's Command.
Yeah, and that's the perfect insurance policy here. He has a Shatter available, and now he has a clean answer to the Nexus.
Well, he'll go for Creeping Tar Pit and then flash back the last Lightning Bolt. So game 1 over to Gerry Thompson. 1-0 over Todd Anderson at the moment. Grixis Control taking the game on Infect.
Yep, and you saw the recipe there from Thompson. Discard spell to take the lone threat. A lot of discard spells to rip up the remainders of pump spells there. Some good answers to the threats that Anderson had to follow up, and a Creeping Tar Pit as the leftovers to finish out the game.
All right, well, the players are going to move over to the sideboard for game 2. We're going to go ahead and take a look at this as well. We'll start with Todd Anderson. He's down a game. We have a set of Nature's Claims, 3 Dispels, 2 Twisted Images, 2 Relic of Progenitus, a Carrion Call, a Corruptor, a Necropede, and a Spellscape. What do you like in the matchup?
More protection here. The 3 copies of Dispel seem great, with Thompson having a boatload of instant speed removal. Also like the 2 copies of Twisted Image. It's a very good answer to Jace Vryn's Prodigy, and he probably knows Thompson's list, but if it was concerned about Spellskite, also an answer there. I think additional copy of Spellskite is great for this matchup too, as I think Todd just is in the market for as much protection for his threats as possible.
Yeah, Gerry certainly had no problem killing each creature as Todd played at that game.
2 copies of Relic of Progenitus is great here too, because Thompson's using his graveyard for flashback, for Del, for all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, we might see that one. I mean, Relic does a great job of keeping pace with something like Jace if Thompson's trying to flip it.
For sure.
Over on Gerry's side, we see a smattering of different control cards. We see 3 Fulminator Mage, 2 Vandal Blast, 2 Dispel of his own, 2 Radiant Flames and Engineered Explosives, a Tribute to Hunger, not a card I would have expected initially, a Counter Squall, a Surgical Extraction, a Liliana of the Veil, and lastly, a Glen Elendra Archmage. Lots of options here for Thompson.
So the Counter Squall we saw the last time that Thompson played this matchup on camera. I would expect it to come in again, alongside the 2 copies of Dispel. After that, he's got some slow options, which are okay removal spells, but not necessarily fast enough for the matchup, especially when Anderson is on the play. Cards like Radiant Flames, Engineered Explosives, Fulminator Mage Edge, or Nexus. These are not horrible cards in the matchup, but they are a little bit slow, and Thompson may want to stay away from them, at least when he's on the draw.
So how do you feel about a card like Tribute to Hunger? It's non-targeted removal, so in that sense, it can be very good against Infect, but there's the risk, because it's an edict, that it might not hit the creature he wants.
I have the same criticism of Liliana of the Veil, is Anderson has, the matchup's very fast, and Anderson has a Dryad Arbor in the deck. So edicts, I think, are typically pretty bad, and Thompson wants to focus as much as possible on targeted removal.
So it'll be interesting, both players going toward a Dispel, Counter Squall, Counter Magic sort of matchup really should make these ones much more of a chess match post-board.
Well, Anderson needs to punch through his threats, keep them in play, and force through his pump spells, and Thompson needs to answer threats and prevent pump spells from resolving. So Dispel is going to be one of the better cards in the matchup on both sides of the table.
All right, we want to take a second here as they get ready for Game 2 to tell you about SCG Game Night. We've been having that go on all year, and you see exclusive pins and tokens given away. This happens at your local store any night of the week. It could be an SCG Game Night. In December, at participating stores, you'll receive the Reindeer token and pin. You've seen the pins on our jackets, and that token right there, just in time for the holidays. Now, that one's that month. We'll see next month coming up, we have Grizzly Brand, the tokens and pins. Of course, we have some parody creatures coming up next year, and I'm excited for this next one because I actually haven't gotten to say it on air, but I'm really looking forward to it. So if you sign up now, you can time for February, can get the Magus of the Moo.
You get it, because it's like moon, and it's a cow.
It's great.
And cows say moo.
Yeah.
That joke doesn't really need a whole lot of explanation, but here I am anyway.
There, you can get it in all its glory on pin and token. It even has the tribal Minotaur keyword of being a 2/3.
Good with the 1 or 2 cards that make 2/3 Minotaur tokens, so.
Yeah, if you remember that from Theros, that was the tribal mechanic for Minotaurs. It was being a 2/3.
Right, sometimes having haste, sometimes pumping other Minotaurs. Hopefully somewhere down the line, add some more content to that deck and maybe becomes a modern player.
Yeah, I never understood that. You know, the cards like Didgeridoo, the problem is all the Minotaurs just cost 3. You know, you're cheating 2/3s into play.
Right.
It's not impressive.
Exactly, you're not getting that great of a deal.
They're instant speed.
It's
so
true.
that's cool. You can just get Minotaurs out of nowhere. All right, well, we're underway. Game 2 here. Todd is going to go ahead and Jataxian Probe at Gerry. Draws off that. We see Tribute to Hunger actually has been brought in on Thompson's side.
Yep. A little bit of a slower hand here for Thompson here. PA Kier Nolar as well.
Now, well, we're going to take a look at Todd's hand. So Noble Hierarch into play, and you look at the rest of his hand, it is more creatures. So he has 2 Ink Moths, a Glistener Elf, a Blighted Agent, and a Forest. So 4 Infectors here for Todd. This seems great against someone overloading on removal.
It's a slow hand. I mean, it's going to take Anderson a while to be able to win this game, but he's at least protected from discard spells and removal spells because his threats are so redundant.
Yeah, and I mean, I love having double man land against Grixis control. Gerry's going to go ahead and take away the Blighted Agent. And go back over to Todd. He has picked up a copy of Twisted Image, something you were saying you might like in the sideboard against Jace.
It's also just the floor on that card's still pretty high. It doesn't cost you very much to bring it in.
Yeah.
And if you tag a Jace with it, it's just excellent.
A swing here from Noble Hierarch for 1 damage at Gerry. You're right. Todd can just cycle it off. It's pretty easy to do that here.
Yeah, low harm, and the upside's very high if it kills a Jace.
All right, we go back over to Gerry. And take a look at just whether or not he can keep pace with these infect creatures. Todd making 2 last turn with the Ink Moth and the Glistener Elf.
But again, a hand that's light on pump spells. That's the consolation there for Thompson. He's probably going to have a fair bit of time here.
You can go ahead and shock for Watergrave. No real concern about life points, not against Infect.
You say that, though. Last game,
yeah, I mean,
mattered.
It can happen, but with no pump spells in Todd's hand, it's a ways off. But you're right, I shouldn't say that. We've seen Tom Ross do that way too many times for me to not think it's not possible.
I've had it happen to me often enough. It's definitely plan B, solidly plan B, but it's not a total freebie to be fetching untapped duels the whole game.
I don't think I've ever died to normal damage out of the deck. But
you play decks that kill on turn 3, so
right. So either they kill me or I kill them. It's like pretty straightforward. Serum Visions for Gerry. We'll get him into Inquisition of Kozilek. We'll get another look over at Todd's hand. Looks like it misses. Todd's hand was all lands there.
Well, I believe Thompson got the Twisted Image out of the hand there, clearing the path to the Jace that he drew.
So actually a big win for Thompson when you think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
He's going to take some points of Infect, however. Ink Moth Nexus fired up. Glistener Elf rather joins in, and there should be some poison on Gerry now.
There is a route, though, for this game for Gerry. If he can get to Pia and Kira that really slows down the clock a lot, because then Thompson's just attacking for 2 with Blighted Agent plus an Exalted Trigger. At that point, if Thompson can find a removal spell for the Blighted Agent, or simply use Pia Kira it's not a lot going on Anderson's side of the table.
That's a great point. Pia and Kira is a card I've been a little skeptical of, but 2 1/1 flyers seems just ideal in this matchup.
Lingering Souls can be very good against Infect if you get enough time or you're backing up with removal, and Pia Kira is Lingering Souls plus.
Got to watch out. Big draw from Todd here. It looks like he's going to go ahead and swing with 4 Infectors, and now we have a Groundswell on the Blighted Agent. So 5 poison and up Blighted Agent, 2 more off Ink Moths. Gerry is at 9. He did block the Glistener Elf, so his Jace has 1 -1/-1 counter on it, but just so many Infectors, and now they're all lethal next turn. Gerry has to take care of 4 creatures. And is that even, I don't even know if that's even possible out of his deck.
Well, I think the route here is he can flip the Jace this turn, plus it on the Blighted Agent, play Pia and Kira.
Okay.
I think he's,
we're
Thompson,
not dead.
Thompson draws any pump spell, Anderson draws any pump spell and it's all over.
But we're not dead.
I think he's got the board clear if he does this.
Wow. And
3 blockers against 3 other attackers.
Yeah, no, you're right. He can take care of all 4 creatures. It's not great, and he's going to do that. Jace flips, discards Tribute to Hunger. Blighted Agent is targeted, so it's now going to be a -1 power. Pia and Kira played. Here's 2 blockers. Gerry, he knows he's on borrowed time right now. Can he dodge a top deck? And I think it's Windswept Heath from Todd.
Well, not only, if he needs to survive this draw step, of course. If he gets to untap, it might be very hard for Anderson to come back in this game.
Wow. No, and you're not wrong. He needed to dodge 1 draw step, and he may have done just that. Yeah, Ink Moth Nexus activated. It will swing. Good play by Todd. It's going to exalt to a 2/2, so it can take care of both Thopters. This will clear the way for next turn's Ink Moth.
Yes. So Thompson now has to make the decision between chump blocking or double blocking.
This is a close call for Gerry. And he'll go ahead and single block. So Gerry gets another turn. 5th land. It does look like he has a 2nd copy of Pia and Kieran as well. Obviously can't play it immediately because it's a legend, but could do, you know, he'll have more blockers. He can use these pretty liberally.
Yep.
Jace Plus is targeting Blighted Agent. We go back to Todd. Another draw. This one's Relic of Progenitus.
Relic's not shabby. It's a cantrip, and Gerry's graveyard is a valuable resource.
So for Todd, he plays the Windswept Teeth he picked up last turn, plays Relic of Progenitus. Looks at the board, Todd Anderson trying to get one last point of Infect across. Let's see how he can do it. And go ahead and fetch. Fetch for Forest. Still has 4 creatures in play, all with Infect, along with a Noble Hierarch.
Thompson really needed to fade that one draw step 2 turns ago. Did it, and looks like he is crawling back in, though definitely not out of the woods.
I'm becoming a believer in Pia and Kieran Nalaar. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of blockers, and once you untap, you have a lot of control over combat. I mean, if people play with Huntmaster of the Fells in Modern, which they do,
right,
you got to figure there's a room for this card too.
And this time it'll be Glistener Elf making the attack. It's going to go ahead and Exalt up to 2/2. Remember, if Gerry goes for a kill spell, Todd can draw a card at instant speed as well.
And you can see what Anderson's trying to do is just leverage Exalted here.
Yeah, I like how Todd's playing this.
Right, he's just trying to, you know, he can't go wide and attack with everything. Thompson's blocks are too good that way. But he can slowly but surely try to wear down this Pia and Kieran Nalaar, and threatening the 2 Nexuses on the way back means Thompson has to be extremely careful about how he blocks.
Well, it looks like Thompson is going to go ahead and put Pia and Kieran Nalaar in front of Glistener Elf.
And Thompson has drawn Dispel, which means next turn, assuming this trade happens without a hitch, he can play a 2nd copy of Pia and Kieran Nalaar with Dispel backup.
So now he's not worried about pump spells.
Plus, you can plus the Jace again.
That's right.
You don't worry about the pump spells. You have blockers for the Nexus.
Now, it does have to watch out. Todd can draw multiple cards, so one Dispel doesn't totally have it locked up. And to that effect, Gerry's going to block, but before damage, he sacrificed the Thopter to take care of Blighted Agent. Let's go back over to Gerry now. Draft turn, he has a replacement in Nalaar, which on the surface looks like it could be enough to take care of the Ink Moths. Now, there's some concern, though, that Todd can start running back that play he did last time Gerry played Pia and Kieran Nalaar, where he leverages Exalted again.
Yeah. And I think we're actually going to likely see that next turn, assuming Thompson's play here is Pia and Kieran Nalaar leaving up a mana and the Dispel.
Well, right, the Jace has been really strong for him. However, it cannot plus on Inkmoth Nexus. So while the Jace is keeping the Blighted Agent at bay, it's not, on the board at least, doing that kind of work.
Which is why I was a little bit surprised to see Thompson last turn care about the getting the Blighted Agent on the table, because you have Jace to check that.
All right, now this starts to make some sense. He's going to go ahead and you delve a Murderous Cut.
Okay, this line of play now makes a lot of sense with everything that was happening. Because once the Exalted is off the table, the real threat is the Blighted Agent, because any pump spell wins the game. Now with 2 blockers against 2 attackers, a pump spell doesn't matter all that much.
Well, that's going to be enough to get Todd to crack the Relic of Progenitus. So Gerry tapped out. He has a Jace, a Pia and Kieran Nalaar, 2 Thopters. On Todd's side, double Inkmoth Nexus, 2 cards in hand. At least one of them's a pump spell, I believe both.
On the previous turn, to me, it felt like the 1/1 flyer is more valuable than the Blighted Agent. But if this was the route of play, this makes a lot of sense how Thompson set it up.
All right, well, Todd goes out and swings 1 Inkmoth. Gerry blocks with a Thopter. Todd ground swells. Jace will plus up to 9. And Gerry will swing Pia and Kieran Nalaar. Todd to 12. Leaves back the Thopter to block. At least for this turn, he can take care of both Inkmoths.
Yeah, he can. in fact, block and shoot. So it's got this
Right.
covered a couple ways.
However, Gerry's hand remaining is a Dispel and a Snapcaster Mage. So despite being ahead here, that Relic of Progenitus eating Gerry's graveyard was very relevant.
Yes.
Now, Snapcaster doesn't have a kill spell to find. So Todd swings both Ink Moths. Gerry blocks and shoots the Ink Moth. Todd draws a Vines of Vastwood. And Gerry with the Dispel. So we're alive for one more turn.
Big draw step coming here. If Thompson finds a removal spell, he's got Snapcaster in hand to pair with the Dispel to trump anything Anderson could draw off the top. If he misses, though, that's it.
And can he do it? His draw was a discard spell. I don't believe that'll be good enough. And we are on to game 3, so Todd evens it up. Gerry does a great job of dodging a top deck from Todd early on, but it comes back to him needing to top deck a second time and can't do it.
I think Anderson did a very good job there. Once the game slowed down, of maximizing that Noble Hierarch. He was able to battle through 2 copies of Pia and Kira Nalar, no small task for an Infat deck, by forcing a lot of unfavorable blocks there for Thompson leading up to the last turn of the game.
Pia and Kiran was the all-star here for Gerry. There was a board where he was down 4 creatures to 0 at 9 poison and almost stabilized on the back of the card.
Yeah, he was very, very close to getting that one resolved.
So they're going to go back to the sideboards here. Plenty of time for game 3. Remember, this is for 8-0. Both these players already with invitational wins to their name, looking to get another one this weekend.
And Todd Anderson, a win here. He's going to be going to the Players' Championship regardless, but it would open up a slot for most likely Eric Hawkins. Thompson would be out of nowhere, but it wouldn't be that huge of a surprise.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you are one of the players who are already qualified for the event, you are probably rooting against Thompson getting to the Players' Championship.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people could qualify. He's going to be one of the strongest players in the field if he gets there.
Especially given his proficiency across all 3 formats. I mean, there is no weakness to Thompson's constructed game.
Yeah. Remember that it's not just that Players' Championship invite at stake this weekend. The winner gets to have their likeness on a token that we come out with. The most recent one of those was our Season 3 Invitational champion, Alex Bestecki. You've seen his Germ token before. That one's been given away at all of SCG Opens during quarter 4. Right here, also available with orders from StarCityGames.com. Still just for a limited time, though, after this one, we will soon be switching over to our newly crowned champion.
Yeah, typically you can get these tokens through registering for Open Series events or a 5K Premier IQs, but as the year is winding down, you're going to be out of opportunities to do that. And after this tournament is over, we're going to have a new token coming down the pipeline that'll be given out during Season 1 of 2016. So if you want to get your hands on this Germ token for a limited time only, place an order from StarCityGames.com, $5 or greater, be shipped with this token for free.
Right now, we go back to game 3. One thing I noticed there is that Todd, game 1 had a hand of many pump spells and few creatures. That one didn't go over very well, but then we switched to game 2 of hand of almost no pump spells and all creatures. It seems like his odds are much stronger for him.
Well, it really just depends on the type of hands that Thompson has. Those kind of hands that are going wide are vulnerable to Thompson finding Pia and Kira Nolar especially. I think on the balance, though, Anderson's better served with the hands that have a lot of threats and are light on pump spells than the other way around, because one discard spell, one terminate it's gonna break up a lot of his most explosive hands. I think multiple copies of Nexus, multiple copies of Infect creatures, even at the cost of having some pump spells in the hand, is preferable for Anderson in the matchup.
Have to agree there. And just so many dimensions to the last game. I mean, if Todd say for example, if Todd doesn't have that Relic of Progenitus that we saw, Gerry gets the game. I mean, he did end up that game with a Snapcaster in hand and a Jace on 9.
Yeah. Every piece of the puzzle there was critical for Anderson. The explosive start, being protected from one removal spell by having so many Infect creatures, the Noble Hierarch doing a lot of work against Pia and Kira Nolar, and the Relic was significant as well.
Go back over to Gerry. He's going to go ahead and mulligan. Looks like Todd is set on 7.
But Thompson's deck has a lot of ways to recoup lost cards, a lot of sources of card advantage. So I think he can be very liberal about mulliganing in this matchup, and he has to, because Anderson does not give him a lot of time. I think
Yeah.
you might have flashed a no-lander there. So that one's easy.
All right, yeah. But when you're right, I mean, especially because of how Todd's deck works, as long as Gerry has early interaction, it seems to me like he's okay being down a couple cards. He'll find that later.
Well, as formats get larger and the gameplay gets more extreme and faster, mulligans tend to matter less because specific cards matter so much and the game's over so fast that you often die with spells in your hand anyway.
Yeah. Or they can be like standard, where everybody dies with spells in their hand because their hand just never runs out of cards.
Exactly. You have a whole hand the whole game, so you can mulligan for your lands.
No, but I do agree, especially you see that in Modern, where decks like Infect can threaten to win so quickly. You know, you need that right card, otherwise the other ones may not matter.
Yep.
And Gerry keeping on 6, a Scry to the top. He will start on Inquisition of Kozilek. And on Todd's side, it looks like another, well, a hand with some weakness. So 2 Inkmoth Nexus, that's the only land. There's the weakness to it. On their side, he has a Noble Hierarch, a Necropede, a Dismember, a Groundswell, and a Gitaxian Probe.
Well, the big weakness to this hand is Anderson is lacking green and blue mana. He's got his draw step, he's got Gitaxian Probe, and he's got the 2 copies of Inkmoth Nexus as, you know, insurance in the event that he misses. But this is a hand from Anderson that can go south in a hurry if he doesn't find green or blue mana very fast. And it really has to be green mana, because that unlocks his hand.
So in that situation, I mean, how ridiculous is it to try to just take Gitaxian Probe and limit Todd's draws?
There's no obvious hole to pick in this hand regardless. There's multiple Infect creatures. You can take the 1 pump spell, but that feels pretty anemic to me. I just like trying to maximize the chance that his draw fails.
He's going for the Mana Screw. He goes ahead and takes takes Gitaxian Probe, and you see Todd with some cheekiness there, plays Breeding Pool. And high risk, high reward here for Gerry. That one does not pan out. So Todd, turn 1 Noble Hierarch. And Gerry's gonna have to reload. Plays Serum Visions. See for Gerry, a pretty reasonable hand actually. Draws another copy of Serum Visions off the first. Mana of all colors. Dispel. Looks like at least 1 removal spell as well.
So Todd there drawing to 17 green sources plus a redraw with some of his cantrips. Gitaxian Probe.
Sure, so he has maybe up to 3 more redraws.
Yeah, he's, you know, the Breeding Pool off the top, of course, is perfect. But it wasn't like Anderson's drawing that slim to find the mana early.
Yeah, I mean, if he's about 2, so 2/3 to hit, or 1/3 to hit with each draw. So Necropede is the turn 2 play for Todd. Infector, which we knew about in the opening hand. And it'll be Kolagon's Command for Gerry. This is big. It's the straight 2 for 1. Goes ahead and Shatter on the Necropede. 2 damage on the Noble Hierarch. Clears up the board. And for Todd, takes an opportunity to animate Inkmoth Nexus, put a Rancor on it, swing, 3 poison, Rancor comes back to his hand.
But that's not a turn that Thompson really minds very much, because if he untaps with some mana available and says go, it becomes very risky for Todd to run that play right back.
Right. So 4th land for Gerry, he'll pass. And a big sigh here from Todd. Playing into a lot of open manas, many things to consider.
Terminate, Lightning Bolt, another copy of Kolagon's Command. A lot to consider here. Some friendly banter at the table.
Sure.
Todd taking his sweet time on this turn, you know. A little swig of water. I like that Todd has gone from, all right, keeping a risky hand with not that much mana to flooding out a little bit.
Yeah. He will play a Spellskite for his turn. Still has a Dismember and Groundswell in his hand that we know of, but may just be having to protect these Inkmoth Nexus. So he plays the Spellskite and then activates, swings with Inkmoth, puts Gerry to 4 poison. Rancor and Groundswell in Todd's hand.
And a very nice mixture of cards to have there, too, because Rancor is a good response for Todd to P and Kieran because he can just trample over some blocking tokens, and with the right mixture of pump spells can win the game on the spot.
You see Gerry with P and Kieran in hand, he doesn't have a 4th spell. And if you're Gerry, you know about the Groundswell, you know about the Rancor. I mean, he just can't, this is a play he can go for, but this is dangerous.
Well, the alternative is not doing very much for him here.
Yeah.
Because what's he supposed to do? Pass with the spell out? Then Todd just chips away 2 at a time, and eventually the same thing happens. So I think Thompson's got to at least try to get something going here.
All right, well, Todd goes ahead and plays the cards Gerry knows about. So he activates Inkmoth Nexus, puts a Rancor on it, swings, did not draw the land for a turn. You saw Todd pounding the top of his deck. He knows if he had a land here, this was lethal. And could not hit, so he'll use 1 Groundswell. So 4 will trample across Gerry at 8 poison. The land would have made it 10.
But still a fine position for Anderson to be in, with the Rancor powering through the blocker and Spellskite to punch through removal spells.
Right, so Gerry can't use Pia and Kieran to shoot down Inkmoths. Gerry did draw Fulminator Mage for the turn, so that's something that Spellskite can't redirect here. A little bit of a cheeky move here by Gerry. He's going to go ahead and swing P and Kieran into Spellskite. Ask Todd if, if he wants to take that risk, and he won't. Todd with a 16.
Gerry's not blocking with it, so might as well get in.
It's an 0-4. This is free. I mean, the danger would be if he blocked, then Gerry could maybe discard and shock. Well, no, but they could do that in Shatter anyway. I mean, it might just be free points of damage.
It turns Lightning Bolt into a card if he blocks.
All right, and that may be too much to risk. So Gerry's follow play will play a copy of Fulminator Mage. Yeah, Todd pointing at it. Cannot Spellskite a Fulminator Mage. If he drew a land, he could dismember the token. We'll see Todd go for dismember, and that'll be dispelled by Gerry.
Yeah, Thompson needs the flexibility to have the Fulminator Mage, I think, in play for as long as he possibly can afford to do so.
Yeah, I mean, once it's not in play, then Todd can start using the Rancor again, right?
Yep. A lot of Anderson's pump spells are cut off right now in the face of a 1/1 blocker and Fulminator Mage.
So from Todd, it'll be Relic of Progenitus. He'll tap. And Gerry may have done again stable. Once again, we've reached a game where he's at a high poison total, but it's not clear if Todd can get those last points across.
And it's a tenuous stabilization right now.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of Anderson's cards end the game on the spot. But as long as he can keep Fulminator Mage in play, it's very hard for Anderson to make that final attack.
Right. So for Todd, he cracks the Relic. Both players, and he draws a fetch land. So far, so good for Gerry. See, he's going to swing in with Fulminator and PN Kieran. That would be 2 damage. Thinking twice about it now, he might be concerned that Todd would have a pump spell on the block.
Maybe, but Thompson, I believe, has picked up a Kolaghan's Command for the turn. So if he's really that concerned about it, he has the option to just shatter this Spellskite and, I don't know, shock Todd or whatever the case may be. He can also attack, deal 2, and make it.
He's got plays.
Yeah, Shatter plus X seems like the easiest thing to do, but we'll find out in a moment.
And here's a swing with a pair of 2/2s. Gerry was happy to take 2 damage, but Todd wants the Fulminator. Here's Groundswell.
Yep. And I think this might be the moment that induces the Shatter here from Thompson.
Yeah, well, if he loses Fulminator, then the Rancor actually just kills him, doesn't it?
Exactly. He needs to keep the Fulminator Mage because he has total control over things as long as that stays in play.
So Kolaghan's Command to shatter and discard. So he actually, because that was Todd's last card, gets Rancor out of Todd's hand as well.
Yeah, did an excellent job there of trapping Todd. You know, he's got the 2 pump spells in his hand. it's a great opportunity for him to try to get the Fulminator Mage off the table. Todd really can't just hang back and wait much longer. Has to go for a block there, and Thompson got everything as a result, and still has a blocker back, and the Fulminator Mage, and I believe his last card in hand is Lightning Bolt.
Wow.
Which is also
yeah, and just turned around. And now Todd, no choice but to go for these ink moths. He's going to activate both of them and swing. And I think he knows he's going to lose all his creatures, but maybe he just has to.
Yep.
Gerry, Thopter in front of one. And this is, the sequencing here is important, right? He can't just go and Fulminator immediately.
Well, if he goes and Fulminators immediately, then there's a risk he could get knocked out by something like Vines. So he has to be careful about how he sequences, but Thompson did just fine there.
Thopter token will trade with one ink moth, and the Lightning Bolt out of Gerry's hand will trade with the other. So he keeps his Fulminator Mage and now looks to reload with Serum Visions. A pair of 2/2s in play. He has Todd now down to 5. Looks like Lightning Bolt in hand, so Gerry should have it on next turn. You go to Todd. 2 lands in hand. That won't do it. He'll pass. 4 from Gerry. Lightning Bolt makes it number 5. And there you go. Gerry Thompson takes it in 3. And the Invitational Champion moves to 8-0. Looking for another title here. He is your undefeated player on day 1.
Yeah.